Right, we're recording. Hello and welcome to Integrity Talks. I'm Charissa Bloomberg. I'm very honored and very excited to have Professor Jonathan Jansen join us today. Professor, thank you so much for your time because I know how busy you are. But those who do not know, I really just want to say that you are a distinguished professor of education at Stellenbosch University. You are a recipient of 3 honorary degrees. Prof, I wrote this all down. You are an internationally renowned expert on education. You've published numerous books of which you've won awards. And a colleague of mine, Professor Tuli Madizela, I have to throw that in. I'm so excited because I have seen you publicly speak. And a fellow of Stanford University, but so much more. But welcome and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Professor, I want to just launch right into it. I'm loving all your tweets, just telling it like it is and giving your opinion and also motivating the nation, which needs it right now. So I responded to your tweet, which said it is a mistake for the President's Command Council and Health Task Team to not only be led by epidemiologists, but also that they need psychologists and sociologists who can speak to the emotions of our nation. Now, Prof, our people are frustrated, they are angry. We have impacted millions of lives, you know, the poverty, the loss of the job creation. We are all in a state. So I loved that tweet and I'd love you just to please expand on it if you don't mind.
Yeah, first of all, we obviously need epidemiologists and vaccinologists and physicians.
Yeah.
You know, the medical science people have to be a very key part of the National Coronavirus Command Council and downwards also to levels of ministers of health and whatnot. So that is not my argument. My argument is that people who study pandemics will tell you it is not only a biomedical problem, it is also a social problem. The same was true, by the way, for the AIDS epidemic. The same is true for Ebola in West Africa. And so the notion that you can successfully address these problems only with the expertise of the laboratory is of course dangerous. You know, let me give you a few examples of that. You really do need anthropologists on a team like that to advise government on how to grieve, how to mourn when the lockdown doesn't allow you, you know, to be close to your family members who are dying, let alone to be there in any numbers at the funeral. That epidemiologists can't help you with that. You need sociologists to tell you about the efficacy of social distancing when people in different settlements live on top of each other. You know, no vaccinologist can speak to that. And you need to have historians, believe it or not, on such a council, because historians will tell you things like what happened in the Spanish flu of 1918 when parts of cities like San Francisco opened too early and there were second and third waves, you know, that devastated those communities. So the point simply was, and I'm president of the South African Academy of Science, we're about to put out a national statement that will say, among other things, that the council needs to expand the range of expertise. Now, having said all of that, we should be really grateful that our president has relied on science to advise him and not folklore or opinion or, you know, political expediency. You might recall during the Mbeki era, when he was president, we lost, people estimate 300,000 South Africans needlessly because they were punting beetroot and questioning the efficacy of antiretroviral drugs. We can't have that again. And so one is grateful that at least the science speaks. But, you know, science in a narrow sense cannot help you. And so what do you have? We don't have human rights scholars sort of saying, how do we deal with human freedoms in a lockdown, okay? Other than, you know, beating people for walking outside. I mean, that is not good. So it shows up in our behavior among officials that we have very limited eyes on this very complex problem, which is social as well.
Yes, very well said. Thank you for explaining that. And for me, coming from a psychologist, I am most perturbed that the whole mental resilience, mental toolkit has been left out completely. You know, I started speaking about the 5 stages of loss very early, and that's only part of it. How we all were in denial, we can't believe this, how we went into bargaining. If I say my prayers, if I stay home, if I wash my hands, trying to rationalize it. Then we went to anger, which a lot of us are in. I can't believe it. My freedom's taken away. My job's taken away. My livelihood. The people starving. The animals starving. The horrificness of some of the police brutality, to absolute depression, and then finally to acceptance, which I'm not sure any of us are on. Now, if you're with a family member and you're sitting with anger and your family member sitting in depression, I mean, the dynamics of that. But our freedom taken away, our now ridiculousness of not being able to have T-shirts, we are angry. And I'm getting inboxed all the time. You know, people are saying, I'm on my own for 50 days today. I am depressed. What can I do? I've lost my job. I'm going to be out in the streets. I'm euthanizing my animals. I am just surprised, Prof, that we have not looked at any kind of mental resilience at all for our nation. And it's only our thoughts that are going to keep us strong.
No, sure. Look, I left out the psychologist. I don't know why, but one aspect of advice, it has to be the mental health of our people. If you shut down people in lockdown for 50 days today, Friday the 15th of May, you know, not all of us are wired the same way. You know, I can shut out the world and write books and be okay. At least I think I'm okay. But imagine if you're alone in an old age home and your family can't visit. Imagine that you are an anxious person, you know, and you freaked out about the consequences of this pandemic. That requires really, really strong psychological support systems. People like Mark Orkin, I'm told, has written about the devastation we're going to face as a result of the mental health challenges coming out of this pandemic. I didn't even talk about social workers, you know, and there's a whole knowledge base of social work about how to advise on domestic violence. In homesteads, you know, during this period. So you're quite right to raise it, and it's a huge issue that we're going to have to deal with in terms of mental health.
Yes, and Prof, I want to be proven wrong on this, but when you've got isolation, desperation, loss of jobs, don't know where your next meal's coming from, the suicide rates are going to explode later, and I want to be proven wrong. But this honestly, this scares me, because this is a cocktail for that, and especially for people who have suffered from anxiety before this and depression. So I'm worried for that. I'm personally writing a toolkit for surviving lockdown, which I've been asked by UCT, some of their housing students, someone you actually know, Glenn van Sale, with the Sea Cadets. But I'm writing something about that because our youth are crying out for that. You know, touch is so important to people, the connection to everyone. So we want some tools. It's our mind, that's the internal locus of control, that's going to say, what can I do about it? What am I, or the victim mode, you know, that external locus of control. But sorry, Prof, what is it?
No, I agree. I completely agree with you. You should, by the way, be on that National Command Council. I honestly mean that, you know, because they don't have that advice. And so it's a mix of politicians, some economists, and then the rest are medical science people.
No, gosh,
and by the way, you don't have to wait for suicide when we come out of it. It's already happening. You might recall the very tragic case that saddened me so much of this doctor who was a frontline worker in the New York hospitals. She then got infected with the virus, and she got well again, and she went right back to work, and she killed herself. I can't tell you how much sadness that brought on me. You know, here's somebody who's literally put her life on the line for other people, and nobody's taking care of her. Nobody's, you know, advising and consoling and holding that person long enough and so on. So you're absolutely correct. It's going to be horrible if we don't start addressing this now.
I want to do something like that because she wasn't getting support. They were working hours and hours on end and no debriefing. You know, I see our paramedics, and if I see them, I stop them and I say, are you being debriefed about what you see that was before this, of all the deaths? There isn't support. There isn't support for what the horrors that our people are seeing. And if me as a psychologist is struggling with what I'm seeing and the poverty out there, I mean, can you imagine? I'm struggling to sleep and I have all the tools. What about our other people? So, yeah, so this is an absolute passion of mine, and I think that we need to be doing more. And the few podcasts I put out aren't going to reach the people who really need it. So, which brings me to my next point. Brilliant that you said there are 26,000 schools, 9 provinces. We've got traumatized children going back who've been homeschooled, whose parents are not always ready. I'm talking to the single moms who are struggling. They don't know where also how they're trying to work, how they're trying to school them. But we've got children, exactly as you said, we've got children going back with anxieties. How's it going to work? How I can't touch my friend. What is it going to look like? Am I going to get the disease? You know, we've got traumatized children going back. And my best, you said, and these exhausted teachers. These teachers suffer from burnout in any case all the time. And you know what touched me, Prof? I'm sorry, I'm getting all wound up. You know what touched me when they said, exactly as you're saying, the education hasn't been equal for everyone. And there was a little, I think it was a student who said they had to climb to the top of the hill to get a signal. Oh my gosh, you know. So, Prof, how is this going to work? How are we going to debrief the children when we get back? Can I put out a video that will debrief everyone because we can't get to thousands of kids? So all these things are going through my mind.
Yeah. No, listen, I am dead scared, to be honest with you, about the premature reopening of the schools, precisely because they haven't taken account of the social, the emotional, the psychological, consequences of this shutdown. Just to give you an example, I have put out a project that I'm very excited about called Learning Under Lockdown. And I put it out on social media. The first day I put it out, I started to get letters from 9-year-olds, 13-year-olds from across the country. And I hope I don't get emotional about this, but you know what? I don't know these children, right? And do you know what comes through in all of their stories? Not academics, not the curriculum, not CAPS. It's the fact that they're anxious. It's the fact that they're fearful. And we haven't accounted for this, you know, at all. These are our loved ones. These are, and so when people say send the kids back to school, you know, and cut the curriculum, trim the curriculum, and get it, I'm saying, hello, do you have children? Do you know how children, you know, we don't take young people seriously. And so, and now you can imagine that if you had a fancy school, and thank God, there will be a psychologist and there will be parents who can, you know, afford counseling and that kind of thing. But imagine in 80% of our schools, you're just supposed to go back battered and bruised and find your way and find your food if there's any, and then come back home to your grandmother who is vulnerable. I don't know. I try to remain level-headed about this, but it, you know, for me, integrity is about taking care of the least among us. It's speaking for those who can't speak, and it's holding authority to power to account. And I don't see much of that happening, unfortunately, in the schools debate.
No, thank you, Prof. Exactly that. And integrity is about doing the right thing. It's not even, it's not even coming into the equation, and we won't even touch that on our leaders and everywhere else. But for the children who have picked up also on their parents' anxieties, on their fake news. I read an article this morning that was also just saying, what do we give our youth? They're our future leaders. They're crying out, they're confused. What is fake news? The parents have been arguing, there isn't going to be food. And how are we supporting them? And we want to send them back to school. And we'll have a little, colleague of mine was just saying, it's a little child. We love brushing each other's hair. We love playing. We love hugging. We love touch. How is all of this going to work? So, yeah, I don't feel it's being addressed, Prof. And
there's a beautiful...
prepared.
Yeah, no, you're right. There's a beautiful letter. I must try and find it. I read it early this morning from a principal somewhere in the United Kingdom writing to his parents, and he said to the parents, those of you who believe in social distancing among children have clearly never been to a school, I mean, I tell you, children are not missing mathematics and history. They are missing their friends because they are, like all of us, social. You don't just go to school to cover the curriculum. My goodness, you go to school for friendship, for communion, for touch, for play, for music, for the arts, for all sorts of things. So I think you are, and I really mean this seriously, you are a vital, vital voice in this pandemic, and you need to get out there. I'm embarrassed to say I only heard about you or learned about you in the past few weeks, but I'm going to talk to you about how I can, in my next column, for the Times, which reaches a lot of people. Yes. I really want to draw on you and talk about the coming mental health crisis, emotional, and others that we must talk about as a country.
Oh, Prof, I would be so honored. I just want to do something for them because we are raising our future nation, not only to have the lack of integrity, but not to have the support. So yes, anything I can give on that, I'd be so grateful and so honored.
Okay.
And I think what you did amazing, your stories of learning under lockdown, I think that is wonderful. I think how brilliant. There's going to be, if we look on the positive side, there's going to be some incredible stories coming out there. There's going to be some children, as I said, who walk to get a signal. There's going to be some children who haven't got food in their stomach, but are going to tell you how they manage to do things. There are children whose parents aren't educated to help them, but how they manage. There's going to be such inspiration. And I think that we should be doing some movies, some show after lockdown, sharing stories. We need to start inspiring our nation when all of this is over, and it's going to be a long time. How do we start inspiring them to get their lives back together as well?
Let me tell you a beautiful story, and I hope I won't mention the student's name. She's 9 years old, right? She's at Weinberg Girls Junior School. This kid writes to me today. She says, Professor, I find it very difficult to concentrate on learning when I know there are so many other children my age that cannot learn. I mean, what incredible insight, what incredible love, what incredible compassion from a 9-year-old kid. So, that is, people often ask me, why do you work in education? That is why. Because I see incredible, hope and love and determination and compassion, among young people, which is probably why I became a teacher.
Prof, and that shows incredible emotional intelligence. And now I'm going to turn this upside down, because when I run some of my training, I say, why are we not teaching EQ in schools? That is talking about your 17 composite scales. I won't go through them. That's about flexibility. That's about loss of impulse control. That's about how you manage conflict. That's about your optimism. Why are we not teaching them communication skills? We have something called life orientation. I'm not really sure what that is. Why are we not teaching people how to communicate? Why are we not? I was turned away by the Department of Education, and I won't mention names, when I wanted to run an integrity leadership course at school. And that would include self-reflection and EQ. That will include the choice that you make before, I'm going to steal this. Should I or shouldn't I? And why are we not teaching them to make the right choices? Prof, and just to share something, I was also at TV a while ago, and it was, they were interviewing people in prison, and this was a youth, well, just going into the old, adult stage, and they interviewed her in America, their system. She was in prison without parole for life for a crime that she didn't even see. She wasn't even there, but you know what she did, Prof? Her job was to lure somebody in to sell drugs. That's all she had to do, and then she had to run away. So she lured him in, and they beat him up, and he put up a fight, and they killed him. So the two youths, his life is ruined and hers. And she said, I had a choice. He was a nice looking person. Part of me wanted to say to him, run, but no, I lured him in. And it's that choice I want to be teaching youths, Prof. I want to be them to self-reflect, have emotional intelligence to say, yes, see people suffering. I can steal this. I can hit the granny on the head in the road for money. Should I? That's what I'm passionate about. And why aren't we teaching children? I'm getting carried away. But that's what's
well, yeah. And the last thing you're the expert on this, so I speak with some caution, but the last thing to do is to stick that into a curriculum and have people recite, the rules of good behavior or something stupid like that, I think the most powerful way to teach these things is in the curriculum of your life. In other words, in how you as an educator, as a teacher, behave. Kids, I've got a 2-year-old granddaughter who absolutely fascinates me, And the one thing I noticed about her, even more so than with my own kids, is how she absorbs, everything in her environment. So whatever you do, she makes a decision about whether that's worth imitating or not, And a teacher who goes into a school, into a classroom, and praises children when they do well, who encourages those who fails, who shows up on time for the class. And, so it's a very simple thing that Nelson Mandela taught us, but apparently didn't teach our current president, is if you tell people you're going to speak to them at 8:30, you better be there at 8:30. You want to know what integrity is? It's showing up on time, okay? Because with that comes respect.
Yes, exactly. And you have, what happens when we're not, even that punctuality, or if we're not transparent, or if we've caught out that we tell a lie. We spoke with Prof Tuli Manizela, had an event, and we called it integrity lapses. Once you lose that lapse, whether it's punctuality, whether it's huge corruption, once that integrity lapse happens, there's no going back. The trust is broken. And this is what I want to teach. That's what I want to be teaching the youth. That's my passion.
Yeah.
Make the right choices. Have mental resilience. That's what we should spend the rest of the year. Mental resilience, emotional intelligence, surviving lockdown. Skills, toolkit.
Absolutely. And as I said, that thing we education people like to talk about catching something instead of just teaching something in a traditional way. And that is why, I've just written a book, by the way, called How to Make, it's a story about my life as a learner, over the course from primary school, childhood to now. And I want to put it out, I will put it out to high school kids, university kids, primary school kids, just so that, and the first chapter ends with exactly what you said, okay? At various points in my life, I can tell you now, having grown up in the Cape Flats, I had a clear choice, okay, to have a shorter life, to end up in prison, to, end up dead, and so on. And I had another choice. Fortunately, I had very good influences, like my parents and so on. But at the end of the day, you've often seen this happen in families, that the two children growing up in exactly the same home with the same value system, with the same thing, they go completely different ways. Why? Because you make a choice, okay? And that for me is something so important in what you said earlier.
And Prof, look at you now and your amazing success, which I congratulate you. Imagine you would have just taken a little wrong turn, joined the gangs, taken the drugs. I mean, bless your parents for putting you on the path, but there are going to be all this wasted talent that haven't made the right choices, that haven't got the ability to reflect and say, stop for a second. Am I making the right choice? What are the consequences? It's a simple self-reflection, which is part of my training, and I'm dying to do it.
Yeah, no, but by the way, I don't have that sense of myself at all as accomplishing anything. And that's not even false. Humility is just true. I struggle as a human being. I sometimes make wrong choices. I get up again and I try again, but I'm nothing wonderful to look at. And what I absolutely do believe, however, is that if you instill faith and hope and determination in young people, they can be better than you. You know, I always said, I'm a professor, so I supervise a lot of students, you know, who want to follow academic careers, PhD students and so on. And I always say to fellow professors when I train them, the way you know you're really good is when your students are better than you.
That's a beautiful, beautiful saying. When you put the ego out the way and you let them flourish and shine.
And they will.
And they will. You know, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. I can't believe we've run out of time. And as I mentioned to you, I'm quite open about it. I was quite worried, your brilliant mind. And but it's amazing when it's so incredibly powerful to speak to you. And I'm hoping maybe there can be a part 2 of this where we can continue, because I've got pages and pages of notes here that I haven't even touched on yet. I've got lost in the moment, and maybe at a later point we could have a stage 2. And I'd love to, I'd love to collaborate with you. I'd love you to be part of my integrity book, Writing Integrity in the Time of Pandemic. And
it's a nice title.
Thank you. Yeah, I've just got to get on and do it. Millions of things. Prof, I'm going to end on, is there last wise words to people who may be listening in terms of integrity at this time, doing the right thing, compassion? Any wise words to end on?
Yeah, I suppose the most important thing, I mean, you know, the past, even before the pandemic, you know, one of my hats is that of a professional speaker. So I speak a lot to companies, to schools, in prisons, you know, overseas and that kind of thing. And, you know, what I noticed the past few years, when I say to people, what do you want me to talk about? You know what the most common thing is people say? Across the board, from accounting firms to regulators to governing bodies of schools. They say, speak to us about hope. And it's the concern people have about the state of our country. Now they have another concern, which is the state of our health, you know, our public health. And I think that the most important thing I want to say to anybody who's listening is we've been in crisis before, you know. My generation didn't think apartheid will end, I can tell you now. I'm sure the people in the Spanish flu didn't think there'd be, you know, treatments and vaccines. This will pass. This will go away. We will reset sometime. Might not be tomorrow, but we will. And we will again be able to be together. And I just hope we will learn the lessons from this pandemic. Lessons such as, you know what? The world is not going to be safer if I only take care of myself and not others. That, you know, unless every child has access to quality learning, you can't fix that in the middle of a pandemic. You only fix that, you know, when you're out of the noise. And so we will be good. We'll be okay. And just take care of yourself and just hang in there. And you know, men don't do this well, but I'm telling you, pick up the phone, call someone and just chat. Social distancing is perhaps the wrong word. They should have called it physical distancing. Yes, we don't have to have social distancing. You can call people, you can Zoom with people, you can reach out to people, and we'll get through this.
Those are brilliant, wise words. And Prof, also I'm calling out for people when we're in our darkest hour and we're feeling sorry for ourselves. Look that there's someone out there worse than you. Do something. I'm tired of all these people sending me jokes and funny things out there. Why don't you get, you know, off your phone and do something? I'm collecting food because animals have been left out of this. That's another whole topic. I'm collecting trolleys of food. Can't we all just do something to help the others? You know what? It gets us out of our own depths of depression or whatever it is we're going through and help somebody else. It also gets us out of our frozen mindset to recreate our future, but that's a talk for another day.
I love it. Great.
Prof, it has been an inspiration. I don't want to actually stop talking to you, but I think we've gone for over half an hour. And I thank you for gracing us with your presence. And I thank you for your, as I've said, brilliant mindset. And I thank you for all the good work you're doing, telling it like it is. We need hope. Thank you. Thank you.
Charissa, and Thank you for your voice.